Hey everyone, Leo with the Dreaming Tree, and today we're putting together our Valentine wreath. We've released many wreaths for various occasions over the last year or so, and they seem to be very, very popular with our dreamers, so we wanted to bring you something for Valentine's Day. Now, I've got everything cut out and in front of me here, as should you, and again, know that we have our supply lists in your PDF as well as on the website to help you pick out your colors and decide how much paper you need. Now, obviously, I've gone through and I've done some inking to this piece. Did a little bit of turquoise on the white. There's a little bit of a darker pink around this lollipop color. More turquoise on the leaves. A little bit of dark pink on this foliage here. And then also some dark pink on this flower. Now we've actually got some 3D flowers built into this piece here. And I just want to show you real quick how to achieve the look that I have here. You can see this is how it's going to look when you first get it. So what we want to do, and it's up to you, you can shape these now if you want. I'm simply taking a 1/4-inch dowel and pressing the little petal between my finger and the dowel and then just kind of curling it back towards me. Okay, and that's really all it takes to achieve that look. What we're doing is just kind of, forming and pulling on the fibers in the paper, and they seem to, without fail, kind of hold that shape. Okay, so there is the actual flower itself. Now I want to show you a quick little tip for inking this so that you don't accidentally ink on the surface here. So I've got my ink pad with my applicator, and what you can do is just grab a sheet of paper, just a scrap piece or whatever you have handy, and pop it right behind this little petal here and go to town. Just start inking it, and then you don't have to worry about actually hitting the surface of the rest of the project because it's protected by this little sheet, and you can just kind of rotate it as you go down the line here and ink the rest of the petals. Okay, I wouldn't worry too much about getting all the way down into the corner there. As long as you get a little bit of ink on the petals themselves, I think the tips are just fine. It'll really add a little bit to our project here and make it a little more interesting and pretty. Okay, so just literally just kind of grazing the very edge while hitting the surface a tad to apply that ink on there. And if you want, you can kind of put a dowel, actually a thinner dowel would be a little more helpful to kind of press that towards the applicator so there's less, more resistance, I guess, and hence a little more ink actually making it onto the petal. Now if you are overly concerned or aren't overly concerned about getting ink on this piece, you can just kind of bring your finger back and just be careful with the application. Okay, so anyway, that's just a quick little tip there, and we can begin putting together the main structure here of our wreath. So this is going to be the backmost layer, and we're going to do 2 layers of this color just for stability. So let's start with our first layer and get that in place. Okay, and make sure you get plenty of glue on this, but not too thick, because we've got a lot of surface area. And I would also recommend working semi-quickly here. We can always go in and clean this up if there are little areas that maybe aren't sticking. You can tell this first little area here where I put my glue is already starting to dry up, so you gotta be quick. All right, now with this one here, you're gonna align this so that it matches up with the little scallops on the inner part of our hearts. You gotta give that a little nudge this way. There we go. And I'm afraid that I probably didn't move quick enough here in some parts, and it may not sit completely dry there, but that's good enough. It's actually very close. Okay, so we'll get that one in place. Give that a second to set. You know, I'm gonna grab my brayer for this so I can really press down on these areas here. And you can hear how some of that glue dried up before I actually got it on there. So I'm just gonna go around here, and you can already see that some of that didn't work out very well. So I'm gonna grab my scrap piece of paper here and just paint a little bit of glue on the very end of it, and just kind of paint it behind that area there that is lifting up. And I'm gonna continue that all the way around in other areas where I feel like it could use a little extra love. Now technically, if you wanted to, you could just get a little bit of glue on the inner part of this just to anchor it in position, and then work your way around with this to ensure that we get everything glued, so we don't have to do this twice. But either way, I'll show you what I mean here when I put the second layer down. And there's nothing wrong with this. Again, we're dealing with a lot of surface area, and right now in the Midwest with some really dry conditions, and I swear that the moisture in the glue literally just wicks into the air and really dries out quickly. Okay, so just kind of cleaning that up. That's good. I think I got all of it now. And we'll do the same thing with this piece here. And I'll show you what I mean by, so we can do this. We can just kind of get the glue on the inner part of this. Okay, don't worry about the center too much. And then I'll do a line around the perimeter. And get that nice and centered. Make sure it's sitting exactly over the previous layer. And that center part's going to be covered up a ton when we get the flower on there. So if your center's a little bit off, don't worry about it too much. There's going to be so much stuff going on top of this, it'll hide any little imperfections you may have. Okay, so now, actually, you know what? That method even worked better than my first one. So what I was going to say is, once we get it anchored in the center, if we do have any areas lifting up here, you can just use that little method that I just showed you, where you slip this in between the two layers, paint a little bit of glue on there, and get it to hold permanently for you. Okay, so that is that. Now we're going to take this layer and we're going to glue this right to this piece here. You notice this little half circle or semicircle bump up here? We're going to line that up with this bump here, okay? And then the rest of it should create a nice even border for you. Okay, get that glue on here. And I wouldn't worry too much about getting glue into the little nooks and crannies around the flower. I'm not worried about that going anywhere. But again, gotta work quick, otherwise we'll have to kind of do some additional glue painting here towards the end, since we've got so much surface area. And again, line that little bump up there first, and then watch the point of the heart right here. Make sure it's nice and centered. And then the rest of it should just kind of fall into place as far as that nice even border goes all the way around. And that seems to be the case with mine. And just make sure that all the sections here are making good contact. Okay, so that looks good. And now, and I'm not worried about these flowers. They probably flattened out a little bit. We can always kind of fluff them up later on once we're done with the rest of the project. But the important thing to do at this point is just take a look at your work. And again, if you have any areas that may be kind of lifting up a little bit, You just need to take some glue on a scrap piece of paper, paint it underneath this layer, and then just press it down into place, make it stay. Okay, and you can see once you get all these layers on how nice and solid this feels. And that should withstand the test of time, I think. Okay, all right, we've got a little hanger mechanism that we need to put together. So we're going to take the patterned piece here and throw some glue on it. And glue that to, in my case, a gold foil. We want to line up the heart with the bottom and then make sure that this little section in the center is centered appropriately. So you got a nice little scallop border there. Okay, and press that down. Okay, and this is actually going to get glued to the back. Now if we flip this over, you'll notice that you have some little indicators there, and that is to help you with the positioning of this. Okay, and this little bump here on this little scallop, you want to make sure that you see the center of that kind of sticking out through the little cutout there. Use the markers here to help you with locating and positioning where your glue is going to go. And then use the little markers there. There's one at the tip and then one on either side of this first little curve. And that's that. And just press that into place. Okay, so there's our beautiful little hanger. Okay, next layer that we're going to add to this is this layer where it's got 4 little sides here. Now if you take a look, you'll notice that there's a difference between this side and this side. This side here is really playing with the light more than this side here. This side really seems kind of flat. And that's because we train this. So I'm going to take my dowel, this is a 1/4 inch dowel, and I'm going to put my finger, actually put this little node here between my finger and the dowel, and I'm literally just going to curl it in towards me. I'm going to keep my thumb at the very base of this thing and kind of push it, as I curl it, push it up against my thumb. So we're not only curling it down, but we're curling it in. And you're just going to repeat that for all of these until you have all of them trained in the same fashion. Okay, so again, I'm keeping my thumb at the base of this little nodule here. This little petal, or I'm not a botanist, so I'm not really sure what the correct terminology is. And just curl it in as you kind of fold it up towards your thumb, okay? And that's going to give it that nice round look that will help kind of catch the eye a little bit more, because since we're adding a variation, instead of making it flat, it's round, it's going to play with light in all sorts of fun ways. You'll have some areas with some highlights, you'll have some areas with some shadows, and that really will attract the eye and just make it more sparkly. Okay, so this is going to go on like so. You'll notice that, again, there's that little bump there. You're going to match up the top of the bump on the circle that's in the middle of this thing, holding everything together with this little bump here. And then there's also this little point here. Or actually, here, I'll show you in a second. Let me just get this down. Again, lining it up with the bump there. And then there's two little markers that kind of show you where these little corners go. So make sure you get that centered. We want nice symmetry on this piece. Okay, there we go. And you can see how training that really makes it roll nicely and gives it that extra oomph. Okay, so next up is this piece here, okay? And I did the same thing with this piece, and you can see the difference here. This is after training and this is before. You can see how flat that looks, and you can see how nice the shadows are here and how nice the highlights are here. And then of course I ink this also, so that helped. And do the same thing with this piece. Again, holding my thumb right at the base, pinching the little petal here between my finger and the dowel, and I'm bringing it in this way, like this, but I'm also curling it at the same time. Okay, so that's kind of the trick here to achieve that look. And we'll just repeat that for all of these little petals. And then this one we're actually going to raise up a little bit. So if you have some foam squares, you're going to want to use those. It is optional since we're adding dimension to this. It isn't completely necessary, but once we get the flower on there, I think it'll help to kind of have these and create a little separation between the actual project and the actual base of this and this little piece here. Okay, so this is going to go on like so, and I'm going to take and I'm actually going to use some foam squares for this piece. And I don't know where the heck I found these, but actually I think I found these tiny little thin foam squares in a craft magazine that I bought at Barnes & Noble recently. They weren't labeled with anything, so I have no idea where they're from, but I think I'm going to use those. And for the center here, I'm going to use just one big guy here. So he's going to go there. And we can pull that off. And again, make sure you get that nice and centered. Pardon my head for 1 second. And make sure the alignment is spot on. And how's that look? Does that look okay? Let's see. I'm looking at it on the camera. Yeah, I mean, it's, it is slightly off. That's the cool thing about, I really pressed that down really hard, but it'll come off. Well, let's try that again, Leo. That's the winner right there. There we go. Okay, and then if you'd like, what you can do to kind of prop this up, there's an area here with a nice amount of surface area that you can put a little foam square on, and maybe two actually. I'll peel that off. I'll put two of them on there. Just raise that up a little bit so it intentionally stays nice and raised. Okay, and there we go. And then it'll kind of keep the rest of it up as well. So we'll do that to the other side. And then we got some leaves to look at, and finally our flower. And this is going to go together pretty quick. It's not a very difficult piece. And then we'll obviously top it off with a nice little bow. I kind of pre-made my bow before I started here using my bow dabra, which is very handy. I'm not a very good bow maker, but this thing makes me look like I am. Okay, so far so good. Pull these out. All right, let's take a look at our leaves here. So we got two sets, okay? And the first set that's gonna go down first is this one here. Now what I've done is I've taken and I've pinched at the score mark at the tip, like so, just to kind of make it like that. And then you can take a dowel and press this, the tip of the leaf against your finger and the dowel, and just kind of give it a little curl to make it a little more dimensional. So again, you're gonna pinch all three right at the tip. You can kind of put one finger down in the center to push down while you're getting that initial pinch, just so that you don't warp the paper too much, kind of help ease those paper fibers into their position instead of being too rough with them. Okay, so that's that. And then this leaf is actually going to be pointing downward like this. So we're going to glue that right in the center like so. Just grab your glue. A little bit will go a long way. And take a look at the tip of this. Focus on that. Make sure that this is kind of pointing down at the tip here where the two angles meet on your hearts. There we go. Very simple. All right, and then we have this guy here. And you'll notice that there are some shorter leaves, and those are going to be up at the top. So again, putting my finger right on the score mark and using these two fingers to kind of pinch it in and then work my way out towards the tip, and then just pinch that tip nice and strong. Okay, so kind of ease into it a little bit. Don't be too rough at first, and then give it a good squeeze at the end. It's very gentle. There we go. Okay, and then just like we did with the previous set, you can take that and just kind of curl that around your dowel to give it a little bit of dimension. There we go. And I kind of creased that one a little bit too much. That's okay though. It'll still look good. Okay, and curl the other ones here. Whatever angle is most comfortable, obviously. Do whatever feels good. Okay. Oops. There we go. I'll do the last one here. I think I already did that one, but I think it could use a little bit of a curve. So again, the smaller set of leaves are going to be up towards the top with the larger ones hanging down. So just go ahead and get a little bit of glue right there and get that nice and centered. And just kind of check the positioning. Make sure that it's nice and centered there and that you've got nice even angles coming off the center relative to that first leaf that's pointing down. Take a look at it from different vantage points, make sure everything looks good. And you know, it just leaves our flower here. I just want to show you the little bow. I made it about 5.5 inches wide total. And that's going to go right about here. You can see that it kind of stops right at where this flower is so as not to hide it, because it's a pretty little feature. We don't want to mess that up or hide it. And then in the centers of these flowers, we've kind of cut out flower centers for you, but that's a perfect place for a little rhinestone. So you can add that there. I'm going to hot glue this on after I'm done, but first we need to finish our flower and actually get that together. So I did want to show you one other thing too with the flower. You'll notice that you've got a bunch of petals here. It's a beautiful rose that is gonna, it's not hard, but we do want to kind of line these up based on size. Okay, and I believe that there's 2 that are identical in size, and that's totally normal. Let me just make sure that I'm right here. Okay. Well, they vary. The styles vary, so these are pretty close. I would say it doesn't matter which one goes first. This one is obviously right around the same size. Actually, it's a little bit smaller. And then we've got this guy is obviously smaller, and then this guy's obviously smaller. So again, lay them out from largest to smallest. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to show you what I did as far as inking. This tutorial exists in another video of mine, but I just wanted to show you real quick because it doesn't take long at all. I have this little tool that I use. This is actually, you can get this along with this in the same package. You can get them at Joann. You can also get them on Amazon. So anyway, I'm going to apply some ink to my applicator here. And I always like to kind of take a test run here, see what it looks like. It's very light. I've been using this ink a lot. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just kind of creating circular patterns, circular motions on my sheet and then bringing it in. And yeah, I definitely used up a bunch of this. So I'm going to have to be reapplying a lot here to get my ink. Circular motions just around the tip of the petal. Okay. And I may even need to break out my red because that is not really doing much right now. Let me see what else I got here. Well, I have this color. Maybe that's actually what I used. Let's try that. Oh yeah, that's much better. And there we go. Now you can really, hopefully you can really see what's happening there. Just nice, quick circular motions, not a lot of pressure. It's kind of gliding. You push down harder, you're going to get more ink on there, obviously, but sometimes it starts to look kind of weird and wispy. So, well, but again, that all depends on, depends on what you want it to look like. If you want it to have more contrast, and if you want it to be more vibrant and have more of the ink on there to make a statement, by all means, push down a little bit harder. and get more ink on there. It's whatever you want to do, however you want to make it look. If you want to achieve this very subtle look that's still pleasing to the eye, but I guess it's a very controlled and very safe method that is just universally, has that universal appeal that's going to look good. Sometimes I've experimented with inks on various projects, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to go heavy this time, and didn't really like the result. And one other tip too is before you do this, if you're not sure about the color or how it's going to look, don't do it on the final project. Grab a scrap piece of paper, maybe even the paper that came out of, the scrap that you got out of cutting this out, and test the ink on that first. See what it looks like. Okay, but you can see how nice of a gradient you have there, starting from the inside. That's the original color. As you work your way out, it starts to progressively get a little bit darker, and that's essentially what we're looking for. So down to the last step here, and again, we're just making our little flower. Okay, so we're going to find the largest piece, and you'll notice there's some score lines there in the center. You want to just go ahead and fold those up just slightly. And essentially to shape a rose, what we're going to do is just a lot of random training. Okay, so grab I've got a 1/4 inch dowel here, and I'm going to start by kind of doing the same thing we did before, where I pinch the tip here, one of these rounded areas, and I curl it towards me and kind of bend it and shape it up. Okay. All right, I'm going to repeat that process on all of these, and you can get pretty intense with the shaping on this. Okay, so that's all we're really doing right now is just kind of curling it in towards us and trying to lift it up a little bit. Create that dimension, just make it random. Okay, so you can see what's happening there along the tips. Pretty straightforward. And if you want, you can even kind of peel the petal up a little bit in some parts. There's no right or wrong to doing this. If you take a look at a photo of a rose in nature, I mean, there's so much variation. They do have some similarities as far as how they look, as far as the petals and how they're shaped, I meant. But, they can really take a beating out there in nature and, change the way everything looks. So, create that variation. All right, so next one here. Okay, we're going to do essentially the same thing. So fold that. And actually, you know what? You can tell which one to use based on the center square here. So this one's actually going to go in here because, well, obviously that's the biggest square. So that's going to go at the bottom. But either way, we still need to train all these little petals here. So just get started on that. And that one's going to go like that. This one's going to come in. That one's going to go out and kind of come in. Again, no rhyme or reason, just random. That's what we're looking for here, just randomness. Because that's really what, well, actually I've been watching some documentaries about nature, and it's not as random as we think. But I guess this is a byproduct of nurture and how they grow based on their environment and the factors that influence it. So just think, hey, this is how my rose grew. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue this layer into this layer, and we're not going to box it like this. We're actually going to put it in. It's going to be easier for me to draw this, I think. But a box within a box, but rotated, I think 45 degrees would be the correct way to describe that. Okay, so you've got the main big box there, right? And then when we put this layer in, we're going to put it in this way so the box orientation is like this relative to the first box. I think I explained that well. All right, so grab your glue. Throw a little bit of glue right on the bottom of just the square. We don't need it anywhere else. And again, orientation as I demonstrated there. If you need to lift these petals up a little bit to check your alignments, that's totally fine. Get that nice and centered. And you can see what we got going on here. Starting to form a beautiful flower. Okay, so there is 2. Got a few more to go here. So look for the next largest square. Okay, and again, fold those in, and then we're going to play with the petals a little bit and just kind of shape them. Okay, just going random here, no big deal. Curling that one in, this one's going out, it's going in, and then you can kind of give it a second go. Okay, so again, with this one, same thing. You're gonna offset it 45 degrees so that it starts to really fill in, okay? And let's see here. Get your glue, pop it right on that square. My nozzle's kind of dirty. Okay. Again, just rotate it so that it's not a box on a box. Make sure you get that nice and centered. There we go. Okay. So far, so good. All right, next largest box. Okay, so with this one here, this one we're actually gonna start curling up more. Okay, so I would take my dowel, stick it between the paper and your finger, and start curling it up. Okay, we want it to kind of start curling, making its way up. And then we're gonna take and still kind of train the tips of the petals in various directions. Okay. Just to kind of make it random, make it look real. Okay, so there we go. We'll throw our glue on the bottom of this, and same as before, you want to stagger this. And it might start getting kind of tight in there, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be perfectly aligned. But that will do it, like so. You can use a dowel to really press that into place without kind of smushing it too much. Okay, and we'll get the next largest here. And with this one's gonna have even more of a curve up. Like, you really wanna curve this one up. And actually, if you want, you can kind of roll it like you're doing your hair. Okay, and then we're just gonna take the tips of this and flare the very tips outward. But we want these to start kind of cocooning together, because you know the center of a rose typically is all bunched up. So that's what we're trying to replicate here. And then again, just taking the tips of these and flaring the very tips of these outward. Okay, so again, stagger this a little bit, angle it so it's not sitting right on top of the other square flush. You want to jazz it up a bit. There we go. And we can fold that in even more if we want. Okay, so there it is so far. And then all that's left to do is our final layer here. And to do that, I'm going to take this and we want to actually kind of curve these in half, like so. Just wrap them like this, because we need to kind of glue these together to form that little center part. So I'm kind of starting at the tip on one side and then just rolling it over, wrapping it around. This is a 3/8 inch dowel. Okay, do the same thing on that one. And I'm not gonna worry too much about training the tips of these just yet. Okay, so we've got them all kind of curled And essentially what we want to do is get it together so it looks similar to this. Okay, just enough room to put our little stamen in once it's done. But we want to kind of get it to cup like this. So essentially all I'm doing is taking all these petals and squeezing them together. And you can actually make it a little bit tighter even by maybe wrapping one of these petals or along the outside of the previous one. So I've got kind of one in the middle just hanging out in there, and then one going around this one going around this one, and then this one going around both of these. So you can take a look at the layout on that. I think that looks pretty good for a rose. And hot glue would probably be the best thing to use to quickly allow this to set in this position. But I can show you how to do it with just regular glue. What I would do is take a look at how you form this and look for areas where the two sections are actually meeting and touching. And that is where you want to apply your glue, where they're making contact. Okay, so I see here that I've got a contact point here and here. So I'm going to press that down and just hold that in place so that it sets in that little area there. I've got this little area here glued to the first petal there. And again, I've got a little contact point there. Just throw a little bit of glue on there, and don't worry about getting the glue all over the place for this. I mean, it's going to happen. Okay, so I'll hold that in place. And what I actually did was, I got a little extra glue in there. I'm going to wipe that off. You can take your dowel, kind of push inside if you don't want to get your finger in there. Okay, we'll just let that set. And then once everything's really set, we can take our dowel and really kind of train the remaining parts of the petals that are still, visible and accessible. Okay, so I've got a contact point here, and that's going to contact that over there, or you can actually put some glue on this section here and glue that to the inside there. And it's nice if you can leave a little bit of a gap between the layers while you're gluing too. That will make it look more lifelike. Okay, so be patient here while this sets. If you are, kind of OCD like me and you want to recreate a really pretty rose that's a little more true to life, then take your time and, let that glue really do its thing. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now this little area here, it's got to stick. So I got to be patient while that sets. But aside from that, this is really the last piece of the puzzle here, is the stamen. What we're going to do is take a very thin, probably a skewer, and wrap that around the skewer to make it a tight, nice little, center for the flower. Just glue that right in the center. We'll put this flower on our wreath, and that's pretty much it. So I think you're looking at probably about a 30-some minute project. Not too bad. Okay, so that looks like that might stick. And then you can take, if you want, you can kind of, I'm going to take a thinner dowel here. Let me see what I got. Here we go. And this is, it's not even a 1/4 inch, it's less than that. And I can take that and just kind of play with the little petals here, the very tips of these, and peel them back a bit. Make that look a little more interesting. There you go, just like that. Okay, so grab your glue, put a little bit of glue on the bottom of this little center, and take a look at your flower. And just pop that in where you think it's appropriate. And you can certainly use a dowel to help you make better contact with the center. Keep pressing. And that looks lovely. That turned out really nice. And it's never too late to change the shape of this a little bit. You can always fluff things around and separate some of these layers to create a little bit more depth, whatever you want to do. Okay. So that looks good. And again, the final piece here, the stamen, I'm going to take that and just wrap it around a very thin dowel. Okay, just literally just wrap it around itself. And then once you get close to the edge here, what we're going to do is throw a little bit of glue around the very end of this so that it kind of sticks to itself. So I'm just continuing to wrap it around the dowel. Okay, and then you can take your glue, throw a little glue right at the very edge of that, continue wrapping until it's completely closed, and just hold that in place. Now I'm using a gold foil here on my stamen piece, so I have to be especially patient while I allow this to set. Otherwise it's kind of going to come loose here. Okay, so while you're holding it though, you can take the little tips of these, kind of spray them out a little bit. Create some separation between all of these so make them look a little more full. Okay, now, and if you are using a gold foil like I am, and you want to, well, the gold foil has a white back to it, so I'm just going to take a little bit of gold ink and try to hide some of the white on there. Yeah, it helps a little bit. Okay, so we can take this off of our dowel and throw a little bit of glue right around the middle there. And just pop that right into place. You can use your dowel to help you position that more accurately. And there we go. Okay, so there's our flower. Let that stamen piece really set before you go moving this thing and nudging it around too much. But aside from that, you just need to throw a little bit of glue on the center here and find a good balance for the position of the flower here. Make sure it looks nice and centered. I think that about hits the spot. You can take your dowel or just your fingers, fine. Just make sure you get it nice and centered, and that's really it. Okay, so our flower is in position, looks great, and I'm gonna hot glue this, but just for now, I just wanna kind of see what it looks like. So I'll just use a little foam square to put my bow on there, and there you have it. Beautiful. Let's take a look at the other angle. It came out great. Beautiful little built-in hanger. Perfect little gift. Brighten up someone's day. Let them know that you're thinking about them, that you love them. Or just decorate your own home, a kid's room, whatever it may be. Pretty quick though, and fun. Looks very pretty. And we get to make some flowers, which we haven't done in quite some time. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more where this came from, especially with spring looming. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please take a moment and visit our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, hit the little bell so you get notifications anytime we release a new product. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, I would love to see it, and so would the rest of our dreamers. So head over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can type in the URL here that you see at the bottom of the screen, and it'll take you right there. So happy Valentine's Day to my lovely dreamers, and I look forward to crafting with you again.